Throwaway because my fiance knows my main account and I'm not ready for him to see this yet. Hi everyone. I, female 29, have been with my fiance Frank, male 32, for 4 years and we're getting married in 3 days. Everything has been pretty good between us and our engagement has been mostly problem-free, except for one huge issue. His mother Lillian, female 58. Frank works as a civil engineer and I manage a bookstore that I inherited from my grandma about 6 years ago when she passed. Frank is an only child and his dad died from cancer about 8 years ago. And since then, his mom has been super clingy with him, like calling multiple times a day clingy. At first, I tried to be understanding because losing your husband must be awful, and Frank is all she has left. But it's gotten so much worse during our wedding planning. She showed up uninvited to my wedding dress appointment and cried in the store when they wouldn't let her in the changing room with me. And then 3 months before the wedding, she tried to get us to change our wedding colors, sage green and cream, because they don't photograph well with her complexion. It's not your wedding. Frank deals with her by giving her small wins to keep the peace. Like he let her pick the font for our invitations and the flavor of one tier of our cake. It drives me crazy, but he always says it makes her happy and doesn't really affect us. But I think that's just encouraged her to push more boundaries. Anyway, the real issue. We booked a luxury resort in Fiji with a private beach bungalow for our 2-week honeymoon. We've been saving for like 2 years for this. We originally told our families we were just going to an island resort because I wanted to keep the specific location private. I'm a pretty private person, and I just wanted our honeymoon to be our thing. But Frank eventually told his mom exactly where we were staying because she kept going on about what if there's an emergency and what if something happens to her while we're gone. I was annoyed, but whatever. It's just the location, right? Wrong. Last night at our rehearsal dinner, Lillian stands up to make an announcement with this huge smile on her face. She told everyone she'd be joining us on our honeymoon. She said she booked the bungalow right next to ours so we can experience all our firsts as a married couple together. I literally laughed because I thought it was a joke. But then she kept going about how she would be there for our first breakfast and first sunset and all these island activities we could do together. I looked at Frank, expecting him to shut this down immediately, but he just said, "Mom, he didn't think that's a good idea." That's it. That's all you're gonna say. Then she said she already paid and it's non-refundable, which I found out later is a lie. Frank checked and they have a 72-hour cancellation policy. Frank's sister was sitting next to me and whispered, "Classic Lillian," which means this isn't even surprising to them. So I finally spoke up myself and asked Lillian directly why she would want to intrude on our honeymoon of all things. She immediately teared up and said she just wants to be part of the memories and guide us in our new journey. And then she winked and added that she could give marriage guidance for our first night. The entire table went silent. I wanted to die right there. I could barely look at Frank for the rest of dinner. When we got home, I was furious. We had this huge fight and he admitted he knew his mom was considering joining, but didn't think she'd actually book it. Why wouldn't you tell me this? He promised to talk to her, but all he did was suggest that maybe she should reconsider, and we were kind of hoping for privacy instead of just saying no. Mom, you cannot come on our honeymoon. It's been 2 days and nothing has changed. She's still planning to come, and Frank is still being useless about it. So, I took matters into my own hands. I called the resort and got a manager who helped me cancel our original booking and secretly rebook us at a completely different resort on another island. I haven't told Frank yet because I'm afraid he'll tell his mom and she'll just book there too. I grew up with parents who had zero boundaries and shared everything about my life with relatives. My mom announced I got my first period at a family reunion with all my male cousins there. So privacy is really important to me, and the thought of Lillian being there for our firsts as a married couple makes me sick. I'm not planning to tell Lillian about the changed plans until after the wedding to avoid drama on our big day. I know this is kind of sneaky and I feel guilty about going behind Frank's back, but I don't know what else to do. There's no way I'm spending my honeymoon with my mother-in-law in the next bungalow, listening to us have sex and then wanting to have breakfast together the next morning. No freaking way. Am I being unreasonable here? Should I have just sucked it up and spent our honeymoon with his mom? I'm getting married in 3 days and I'm stressing about this instead of being excited. Edit. To everyone asking if I've talked to Frank about how serious this is, yes, multiple times. He keeps saying he'll handle it, but then doesn't actually do anything. And when I push harder, he says I'm not being understanding of how hard it is for him to set boundaries with his mom since she's fragile after his dad died. It's been 8 years, though. Several people have asked if Frank and I have been intimate before. Yes, we have been living together for 2 years, but Lillian doesn't know that or pretends not to know. She's very traditional and has made comments about saving ourselves for marriage, which is another level of awkward. Oh my frickin' God, this blew up while I was at my final dress fitting. To clarify, I do plan to tell Frank about the resort change before we leave. I'm not going to just surprise him at the airport or something. I just haven't told him yet, because I'm worried he'll let it slip to Lillian before the wedding, and I can't handle more drama right now. Now for the first update. For those who asked, yes, I did tell Frank about changing our honeymoon resort before we left. I'll get to all that in a minute. The wedding itself was actually pretty great, minus the mother-in-law issues, obviously. We got lucky with the weather. It was supposed to rain, but ended up being perfect. My cousin Brian, who was a groomsman, got completely wasted at the reception and fell into our cake during the dancing. Not even the part we'd already cut, the still perfect top tier that we were saving. The whole thing tipped over and smashed. Everyone gasped, but Frank and I just looked at each other and started laughing. I think we were both so stressed about the Lillian situation that it was like a release moment. Oh, and our photographer almost didn't make it because she got into a fender bender on the way to the ceremony. She showed up like 2 minutes before I walked down the aisle with her assistant carrying half-broken equipment. But the photos turned out amazing, so whatever. My favorite part was definitely Frank's vows. His voice cracked in the middle because he was getting emotional and I really felt something. For all his issues with his mom, he really is the sweetest man I've ever known. And yes, to the people who commented asking if I'm sure I want to marry into this situation, this is why. When it's just us, we're really good together. Anyway, right after the reception ended, I pulled Frank aside and told him we needed to talk to his mom. I was honestly terrified. I had been putting it off all day because I didn't want problems at the actual wedding. I told Lillian that we'd changed our honeymoon plans and were staying at a different resort on a different island than originally planned. Frank looked confused for a couple seconds, but then put his arm around me and nodded. Lillian's face dropped. She asked why we would change it without telling her. I explained that we wanted our honeymoon to be a private time for just us as newlyweds. She immediately asked which resort it was so she could change her booking too. She didn't even understand why this was happening. That's when Frank finally stood up for us and told her we needed this time alone as a couple. I was shocked because he's never this direct with her. She started crying right away. She told us she just wanted to be part of our special memories and mentioned being alone since Frank's father died. I could tell Frank was about to give in. He does this thing where his shoulders slump when he's about to cave to her. I squeezed his hand really hard to remind him to stay strong. She then accused me of stealing Frank from her and tearing apart their family. She said they'd always shared everything. People were starting to notice by this point. Frank's cousin was pretending not to watch while fixing her makeup nearby. Lillian finally left saying we had ruined everything. Frank was pretty quiet afterward. I could tell he felt guilty, but also relieved. We left for our honeymoon super early the next morning before anyone else was even awake. The new resort was amazing, much better than the first one. For the first few days, everything was perfect. Private beach, incredible food, and privacy. We tried scuba diving, which was a disaster for me. I totally panicked underwater and started hyperventilating through my regulator. Frank had to hold my hand and basically talk me through it. Seeing him stay so calm while I freaked out made me really appreciate him again. But then on day 4, the texts started coming in. Frank's phone kept buzzing with messages from family members. At first we ignored it, but then his cousin Roy sent screenshots of Lillian's Facebook posts. She had joined this Facebook group called Mothers Abandoned by Ungrateful Children. Yes, that's a real thing apparently. And was posting long rants about how she was cruelly excluded from important family milestones and how she was just trying to help guide them in their marital journey. She made me sound like some controlling person who was isolating Frank from his family. She wrote that I had systematically come between me and my beloved son, and that she was worried about what will happen now that she has him all to herself. The comments were crazy. All these other boundary-crossing moms telling her to fight for her son and not let this woman destroy your relationship. One suggested she should remind him of all the sacrifices you made as a single mother, which isn't even true. His dad died when Frank was like 24. Frank's phone was getting messages from relatives taking sides. His Aunt Peggy called him spineless for not standing up to me, but his cousin Roy was defending us, saying everyone deserves privacy on their honeymoon. Thank you, Roy. I tried to enjoy our honeymoon and ignore all this, but Frank got more worried about the family stuff. He started checking his phone constantly. One night after we'd had a few drinks, Frank told me his mom had always been like this. When he was 16, she chaperoned his first date and sat at the next table in the restaurant to make sure he was being a gentleman. And when he was 22 and got his first apartment, she made a copy of his key without asking and would rearrange his furniture when he was at work because she knew better how to organize a home. Then 3 days before we were supposed to go home, we got an email from Caleb, the manager at the original resort. He said Lillian had shown up there looking for us, and when they told her we weren't coming, she lost it. She demanded to know where we'd gone instead and tried to convince them it was a medical emergency. I feel good that changing resorts was the right call, but I'm also freaking out about going home and facing her and all this family stuff she's stirred up. Frank keeps saying we'll figure it out, but that's what he always says about his mom, and then nothing changes. I'm worried this is just the beginning of a lifetime of this crap. I literally got married 10 days ago and I'm already stressing about my marriage. Not how I thought this would go. Edit. A lot of people are asking if Frank is defending me to his family. Kind of. He told his Aunt Peggy to stop texting him about it, but he hasn't directly confronted his mom about the Facebook posts. He says addressing it will just make it worse and we should let it die down. I'm not sure I agree. Edit 2. To clarify why I didn't tell Frank about the resort change before the wedding, I was honestly afraid he'd accidentally let it slip to his mom. He's terrible at keeping secrets from her. She can sense when he's hiding something, I swear. And I knew if she found out before the wedding, she'd either 1, try to change her booking too, or 2, cause a huge scene that would ruin our wedding day. I was planning to tell him right after the ceremony, but then the whole day was so busy I didn't get a chance until after the reception. Someone asked how Frank reacted when I finally told him about changing the resort. He was surprised for 2 seconds, but then seemed relieved. Later that night, he thanked me for taking care of it, because he knew he wouldn't have been able to stand up to his mom about it, which is both sweet and concerning, to be honest. Yes, I've considered that this behavior will get worse if we have kids. That's actually my biggest fear right now. Frank has promised we'll establish clear boundaries before that happens, but yeah, not holding my breath based on his track record. Now for the second update. Well, we're back from the honeymoon, and I wish I could say everything is better now, but honestly, it's all just spiraled into a whole new level of crazy. First of all, thank you to everyone who commented on my last post. I didn't expect so many people to relate to my situation, though I'm sorry so many of you have monster-in-laws too. So we got back from Fiji about 2 weeks ago. The honeymoon itself was actually amazing once we got past all the drama. Frank was so relaxed and happy when his mom wasn't texting him constantly. But the second we turned our phones back on at the airport, Frank had so many notifications, 47 missed calls from his mom alone. And that's not even counting all the texts and voicemails. Turns out Lillian had taken her little Facebook crusade to a whole new level while we were gone. She wasn't just posting in that weird mom group anymore. She'd made these long public posts about how I was emotionally abusive and had completely brainwashed Frank. She literally wrote that I had systematically isolated him from his loving family and that she was terrified for his safety and well-being. Because I wanted a private honeymoon without my mother-in-law in the next bungalow. And of course she got all his family involved. Frank's Aunt Peggy, who has always hated me anyway, and 2 of his cousins were blowing up his phone about how they were concerned and how they needed to intervene before I completely ruined his life. They wanted to stage some kind of family meeting to talk sense into him about his controlling wife. I was literally standing at baggage claim reading these messages over Frank's shoulder and felt like I was gonna throw up. This was supposed to be the happiest time in our lives, and instead we're dealing with this insanity. Oh, something nice did happen though. My Uncle Charlie left us a sweet wedding gift. It was a handmade quilt that my grandma had started before she died, and he finished it. I cried when we opened it. It just felt so normal compared to everything else. Anyway, 5 days after we got back, we got a call from Caleb, the manager at the original resort. Remember him? At first I was like, why is he calling us? The whole booking thing was sorted before we left. But then he told us something that really upset me. Apparently, after Lillian showed up at the resort looking for us, which we already knew about, she came back the next day and tried to get a copy of our room key. She told the front desk she was me, said she was Joanna Coleman, my married name, and that she'd lost her key and needed access to our bungalow. When they asked for ID, thank God, she couldn't produce any, so they called security. And then, and I still can't believe this is real life, she admitted to security that she wanted to prepare the room with marriage advice notes and set up a camera to capture their reactions to her surprise welcome basket. A camera in our honeymoon suite. The resort threatened to call the local authorities, and she finally left. Caleb was calling to let us know what happened because he was concerned and thought we should be aware of how far this had gone. I looked at Frank when we got this news, and something in his face just changed. Like he's always defended his mom or made excuses or said we need to be understanding because she's lonely. But this was different. This crossed some line even for him. Though honestly, I was still worried he'd eventually cave. He always gives in to her manipulation. Like when we first moved in together and she kept crying until he let her redo our entire living room. Or when he gave in to weekly Sunday dinners with her after she kept going on about family traditions and how alone she was. After a lot of talking and some crying, mostly from me, we decided we needed to confront Lillian directly. Together, at our house, we spent like 2 days preparing for this meeting. I wrote down specific boundaries we needed to set. We rehearsed what we would say. Frank seemed really determined, but also super anxious. I could tell he was torn between standing up for our marriage and his lifelong pattern of giving in to his mom. The day of the meeting, Lillian showed up with this giant photo album of Frank's childhood pictures. Classic manipulation tactic. She was already teary-eyed before she even sat down, playing the victim card hard. She kept flipping through the album saying things like, "Remember this special day," and "We've always been so close, just the two of us against the world." I tried to stay calm, which was really hard, and showed her screenshots of her Facebook posts. She dismissed them as just venting and said she was only seeking support during a difficult time. Then Frank showed her the email from the resort about her trying to impersonate me to get into our room. She claimed it was all a misunderstanding, and she just wanted to leave us a surprise gift. Frank asked her directly about the camera she planned to set up in our room, and she just deflected. Said Frank always loved her surprises growing up, and that she just wanted to capture the special moment when we found her gift basket. Like that makes it normal. I started showing her text messages from the past few years that showed her pattern of crossing boundaries. Times she'd shown up uninvited. Times she'd gone through our things. Times she'd manipulated Frank into doing what she wanted. She started full-on sobbing at this point, saying she felt replaced and forgotten, and that no one understood how hard it was to lose her husband and now her son too. I could see Frank starting to soften. His shoulders did that slumping thing they always do when he's about to give in. I knew we were losing ground, so I took a big risk. I looked her straight in the eyes and said very calmly, "We know about your journal, Lillian." There was no journal, at least not that we knew about, but I had noticed her disturbing comments about our wedding night and guiding us, and I had this gut feeling there was something deeper and more inappropriate going on. Her face went completely white. She went completely silent, like you could hear the clock ticking. She didn't ask, "What journal?" or look confused. She looked terrified. Taking advantage of her shocked silence, I continued. I told her we knew she had written about wanting to be there for our first night together, to make sure Frank performs correctly, and to guide us through the experience. I said we understood she had certain thoughts about our intimate life that went way beyond normal mother-in-law territory. I pointed out that her behavior had crossed from merely annoying to potentially illegal, harassment, fraud at the resort, and so on. Frank was watching his mother's reaction, and I could see the moment he realized my bluff had hit on something real. His face went from confused, because he knew we didn't have any journal, to disturbed as he saw his mother's reaction confirming there was something to this. He told her, in this voice I'd never really heard before, that her behavior had to stop. Now, I laid out 3 options. 1, she gets therapy and respects the clear boundaries we'd establish. 2, very limited, supervised contact only. 3, complete no contact and potential restraining order if her behavior continues. She tried to cry and manipulate again, but we both just sat there not responding emotionally. When she realized the tears weren't working, she finally stopped. She reluctantly agreed to option 1, therapy and boundaries, including a 3-month no-contact period while she begins treatment. It's been about 2 months since then. She's removed her Facebook posts and even made this vague public apology about misunderstandings and overstepping boundaries out of love. Frank has started his own therapy to deal with all the childhood stuff with his mom. We installed security cameras after finding out Lillian had driven by our house like 6 times during the no-contact period. My brother noticed her car when he was over helping us fix our fence and pointed it out. We checked our Ring doorbell footage, and sure enough, there she was, just slowly driving by. After the 3 months, we're going to allow supervised visits with clear time limits. She's sending weekly emails to Frank about her therapy progress, which are weird but less crazy than before. So maybe there's progress. Oh, and I guess I should mention, I'm pregnant. Found out last week. We're both excited, but also kind of terrified about how Lillian will react. We've already established very explicit boundaries about her grandmother role. No unannounced visits, no unsupervised time with the baby, no undermining our parenting decisions. Sometimes I feel a little guilty about the journal bluff, but then I remember her reaction. She definitely has written something inappropriate about us. And honestly, the boundaries have significantly improved our lives and our marriage. Frank is like a different person now that he's standing up to her. He's more confident and relaxed. He says he feels like he can breathe for the first time in his adult life. So yeah, that's where we are now. Married, expecting, and hoping that the monster-in-law situation stays under control. For now, at least. A lot of people are asking why I didn't just show Frank his mom's Facebook posts earlier. I did. He saw them while we were still on honeymoon. But seeing them didn't have the same impact as the resort manager calling about the camera thing. That was what finally broke through to him. To the person who asked if Frank knew about my journal bluff, yes, he did figure it out pretty quickly. We talked about it later that night, and he admitted he was confused at first, but then realized what I was doing when he saw his mom's reaction. He's not mad about it. He actually thanked me for finding a way to break through when nothing else was working.